Federal judge has blocked Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's attempt to reduce the military rank of Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly. Kelly, as you might recall, was one of 6 Democratic lawmakers to record a video, you see it there, last year that reminded members of the military and the intelligence community they had a duty to disobey any illegal order. The Justice Department sought to prosecute them over this video. A grand jury this week declined to bring charges. I spoke with one of the participants in that video, Democratic Congresswoman from New Hampshire, Maggie Goodlander. Here's our conversation. Congresswoman, is this legal situation you found yourself in over?
I wish I could say yes, and it should be. It never should have started in the first place. But unfortunately, I don't think it is.
What do you think is coming next? What do you fear is coming next?
Well, look, my concern is that we have a president and a Justice Department that are no longer respecting the basic limits that have always been in place throughout my lifetime for most of our country's history when it comes to the most powerful peacetime force that our nation has ever known, and that is federal prosecutors and our criminal justice system. We have a president who has pursued people on the basis of retribution and, in our case, on the basis of stating a bedrock principle of American law. And that is dangerous, it is outrageous, it is designed to intimidate and to silence us, and it won't work.
We'll get to the details of that in a second, but you said a bedrock principle of American law. Remind my audience what you mean when you say that, because the president has criticized you as saying something that is treasonous. The Defense Secretary said you are undermining intentionally good order and discipline, confusing rank-and-file members of the United States military. So address that.
We made a decision as a country after the Second World War. We wanted to be a country under the rule of law, where our military doesn't just blindly follow orders. Our military follows the law. And so actually, Robert Jackson, who was the chief prosecutor at Nuremberg, a Supreme Court justice, who helped to develop the basic principles in the Department of Defense's Law of War manual, said that this was the greatest tribute that power has ever paid to reason. This was a choice we made to be a country under the rule of law and a country whose military obeys lawful orders and lawful orders only. This is so core to the basic training that any person in the military gets. This principle is so bedrock and uncontroversial that, in fact, the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, the Solicitor General of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and Supreme Court justices have all repeated this basic principle, including in the case of the Attorney General in a brief before the United States Supreme Court. It wasn't treasonous when Pam Bondi said it. It is not treasonous when we repeated this principle, which is, I believe, a really important principle for this moment. At a moment when the boundaries of our Constitution, which I carry with me everywhere I go because it's a useful document in my job these days, but the boundaries are being tested in ways we've never seen before. And I'll just say, for me, I serve on the Armed Services Committee. When Pete Hegseth came before our committee, I asked him a very simple question that has only one answer. I asked him if he would commit to abiding by a decision of the United States Supreme Court, if he were directed to do so. And he refused to commit to that basic cornerstone principle under our Constitution, that we are a country with separated powers, where power is checked by 3 branches of our federal government, and an unwillingness at the helm of the Department of Defense, in a person whose job is one of the most important jobs in the world, should shock the conscience of every American. And a person who, by the way, understands this principle and has repeated it many times.
Himself in a different context and at different times. You can check the videotape on that, folks.
And you can check the brief that was filed by the Attorney General.
When the grand jury did not indict the 6 of you, Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, Democrat, said this is not a good news story. Why isn't that a good news story? Why isn't that something that people watching this at home should think, well, I can breathe a sigh of relief?
what we have here is a president who, in response to a statement of the law, said that we should be investigated, we should be prosecuted. He went so far as to say that we should be hung for this, that this was treason. He directed the Justice Department to target us, and they followed through on it. And this is chilling. This is designed to intimidate. He incited violence against us, which was a separate line of attack that had immediate, swift, and acute consequences for each of us. And he directed, the most powerful peacetime force our country has ever known, the Justice Department, to come after us. And, this is dangerous for a president to be targeting members of Congress for doing their jobs.
Do you fear that they will try again to indict you?
There is no limit on the number of times that federal prosecutors can proceed in this way. This is why it is such an awesome and extraordinary set of powers that the public trusts the Justice Department to wield responsibly and in a way that it's consistent with the Constitution. What we saw happen this week with a grand jury, a group of ordinary American citizens who came together and, according to news reports, unanimously rejected what was presented to them. And, a grand jury, when you think about our Constitution and the role that juries play, it's a quintessentially American institution. Juries are the beating heart of our Bill of Rights. A grand jury is one of the most generous forums for the government. The government owns the playing field. This is an opportunity for the government to present their case without rebuttal, really, directly to, and that's why when you just look at the stats, overwhelmingly grand juries indict. Ham sandwiches, it was said, but not these days. And what we're seeing is ordinary Americans listening to what their government has to say and not believing that it's reasonable or just. And that's the basic standard. It's a very low bar. And so I think what we've seen in other cases is that this Justice Department doesn't feel rebuked by an overwhelming and potentially historic rebuke, and that they will proceed in the reckless way, in the unreasonable way, in the unjust way that they've proceeded to date.
New Hampshire Democratic Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.